Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you all of the books that I finished in March, that I read in March, started and finished in March, and then also a couple of books that I am currently reading. I just thought, why not just throw it all into this video and make it kind of long, chatty, cozy. So I would actually implore you to grab a snack, get all snuggled up as we are about to hang out, or maybe treat this like a podcast and just listen to it as you do other things. So without any, I will say the new thing, like if you're new here, then I want to extend a warm welcome to you. If you are not new, hi guys. It's been a month. I'm really excited to talk to you about what I read. Back to new people, if you are new, I really love reading. I am on a mission for April to pick up books that I'm going to absolutely love. I have set that challenge for myself, and it was a lot of that had to do with how I felt during my March reads. So if you like thoughtful content about one's reading life and the books that she is reading, I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around, and without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Before I get started in earnest, I hosted a readathon called Fierce Reads, in which we celebrated female writers and a lot of female characters. And originally in my TBR video, when I was planning out the month, the things that I had already set up, I had realized that I was reading mostly male authors. And what ended up happening was that I ended up reading tons of female authors and actually fulfilling a lot of the prompts. And so sort of in a low-key, intentional, but not very planned way, I was able to totally fulfill, my role as host for Fierce Reads, which was great. And I read some really great books by women, and that was really a delightful highlight of my month. I'm inserting this because, y'all, I'm forgetting all of the details. I'm forgetting all of the details of my life. But I hosted Fierce Reads with 3 incredible booktubers. Please go follow them. So Julie, it was the brainchild of Julie at the channel The Hungry Bookworm. She was the one that really put this readathon together, and I'm so grateful for her. Then there was Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot, and Kristin at Enter the Book. Just incredible, wonderful, supportive, beautiful women, and I am so grateful that they invited me to do this thing with them, and that it ended up being a really successful reading month of reading just fantastic women. Okay, back to the video. All right, let me quickly talk about some of the books that I straight up finished in March. When I did my February wrap-up, I was more than halfway through, and I thought that that was it. But both of them ended in ways that I didn't expect. So the first one is going to be Elizabeth George in the Presence of the Enemy. This had a really strong plot, and Elizabeth George does this amazing thing where she has super strong, her core group of characters are fantastic, and she's always developing them. Their relationships are always becoming a bit more nuanced and thoughtful in a whole bunch of ways that are very unexpected and delightful. And then in every mystery she has sort of these new secondary characters in which the mystery is surrounded, or in which the mystery is rooted. And so with this is, in terms of the secondary characters, this was one of her strongest. However, this also is something that happens with Elizabeth George, is that her plot can sometimes get away from her. It can go a little off the rails. And it did that with this. So I think when I was reading it in February, one might have gotten the idea that I was going to really, really love it. But it was one of those, I never regret reading an Elizabeth George. And and so on and so forth. There's no regrets in reading her. I don't want to lose focus. There's no regrets in reading her mysteries. I really enjoy what she's doing, especially in terms of character work. However, this was just one that she couldn't quite tie up in a nice bow, and it was glaringly, it had a glaring errors, especially near the end. The other book that I was halfway through, pretty much, was The Likeness by Tana French. I had infamously DNF'd this about 8 years ago. I was a new mother, and I had gotten to the point where I felt like I was slogging through it. I not only DNF'd it, but I unhauled the book. I didn't want it anymore. And just through being on BookTube and getting very much interested again in Tana French's writing, I decided to give this another go, and I'm so glad I did. It had me in its grips. This book had me in its grips. I could not put it down starting at like the 75% mark. like I needed to know what happened. I thought it was so interesting, and the way, like, the twists and the turns and like the psychology of some of the characters and the way they approached the situation, like the way it all played out was so satisfying. This has got to be one of my favorite mysteries of all time. It is very famously inspired by, we'll say, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. But I found this, Donna Tartt's book is a little bit bleak. Like, let's just be real. This book is just different. It's, in some ways, it hits the satisfying notes of a fantastic mystery. Like, it hits those tones more than Donna Tartt's book does. I mean, Donna Tartt has so many other things that are wonderful that are going for it in that book. It's the way it's written, and I mean, I could go on about my love for Donna Tartt's book. However, a mystery based on or inspired by The Secret History and kind of takes it in its own direction, and being set in Ireland and having a really great setting and having really fascinating characters and really diving deep into those characters. It was so good. It was so good. And I will say that I read her first book at this point like 10 years ago. The first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series, which this is the second book in that series. I don't remember that much from the book. And so I would say that you could probably read this as a standalone. And there is, I think, a little bit of a slumpy middle, but you get to this point, or at least I got to this point, where I was just like, I have to know what happens. And it was great because on that day it was also my birthday, so I was like in the grips of a wonderful book, and I was so in it, and I love that feeling, and like I was able to have that experience and that feeling on my birthday, which made it feel even more special. Let's talk Women's Prize. So the Women's Prize long list was announced, I don't know, at the beginning of March. I have made a couple of videos about my thoughts and my predictions, and essentially I'm also trying to deconstruct the Women's Prize so that the prize itself has me a little bit less in its grips, because, you know, a prize list, and it's like you can kind of get swept up in the excitement of the prize, and in a lot of ways that excitement can lead one to reading a lot of books from the prize, even if they're not necessarily aligned with one's reading taste. And sometimes I just read things off any prize list once the prize list is announced, because I'm so excited and I'm so thrilled about the prize that I end up reading books that I wouldn't necessarily have picked up and that weren't really that satisfying, and I kind of only picked it up because of the frenzy of that prize. And so that kind of happened here with this book, but I think I'm getting better at understanding how I react to a prize list and not getting so carried away with wanting to read as many books as possible or review as many books as possible. I really am trying to stay grounded in prize season, which is basically all year long. Let's just be real. So anyways, the long list came out. I'm holding the book, and I decided that based on the descriptions of the books and based on a couple of sort of preliminary reviews that I had seen, I decided that Ordinary Human Failings would be the book that I wanted to read. I read this with Hannah at Hello Bookworm. She's got a beautiful, amazing, wonderful channel, and it was fantastic, amazing, awesome, wonderful, just delightful to discuss this book with her. It's a pretty short book. This is by Megan Nolan. This is her second novel, and it's supposed to be about a child getting murdered, and this immigrant family from, I believe, Ireland Irish immigrants are the ones that are suspected, and there is kind of what is it, the dirty cop, or a reporter who is not on the up and up, seeking out to discover what happened. So at the beginning, it had this really kind of interesting intertextual element. There were newspaper clippings and articles and interviews and just little kind of snippets of information to help the reader puzzle out how the story of this child being murdered, how the story was unfolding. And it also told you about the raunchy reporter and his motives and his connection to the crime scene. And then you start with part two, and to me, part two was kind of far-fetched, like the way that it started. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't know. Part two created a scenario in which the family is together and very closely, proximity-wise, close to the reporter, and so the reporter can start to understand this family more. And how they got there, to me, was just far-fetched. Oh, I have a visitor. That aside, now each family member, this Irish immigrant family, now gets their own backstory. And in a lot of ways, everything really slow. I felt like the pacing, the newspaper clips and interviews and all that stuff went away, in part two. And now we were just focusing on the family and their history, their personal histories, and mostly their individual histories, and how they relate to one another. And I was like, oh great, the writing seemed to have gotten a lot better in those parts. It was a lot more thoughtful in a lot of ways, and I thought, oh, that's awesome. But then I felt like Megan Nolan made all of her characters incredibly hopeless and very bleak. Everything was so sad. It was sad vibes, miserable, awful, and not in a way where I'm even rooting for the characters. I'm like, why would I root for you? You seem like a terrible human being. I'm judgy to characters in books, not in my real life so much. I'm very gracious in my real life, but I was just like, there's nothing about you that seems redeeming or interesting, or why? You just seem like a horrible human being. And then at the end, she kind of ends it on this hopeful note, and I was just like, too little, too late. No ma'am, not for me. And ultimately, it ended up being more about the characters of this immigrant family and how they ended up in England, and it was way less about the billing of a murder. And I was like, I kind of wanted a gritty, interesting, sort of psychologically driven murder mystery. And I felt like that's what it said it was going to be, and that we were going to have it from the perspective of a crooked reporter. And that's not what I got. So I do think that some of my expectations definitely are a part of why I did not have the best reading experience with this. But even if I'm trying to be as objective as possible, I just don't think it's a good book. I really don't, and I don't think it's worth your time. That's just how I feel. I know that there are people that disagree with me. So Scott, didn't you love this book? We're back to old patterns. I promise you, we cannot agree on literary fiction at all. Like, so Scott, oh my gosh, Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, the channel Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, he and I tend to have very opposite opinions when it comes to contemporary literary fiction. And that I think, said this was a 5-star book or something like that. And I was like, get this away from me. And it's actually turned me off to all of the other women's prize books, which is fine with me because I have beautiful, wonderful, amazing books that I think I will really love on my shelves. So I don't have to get books from the library. I can actually read off my shelves and get my TBR down, and it will be fine. Oh, I have a visitor again. Say hello. Say hi.
Hi.
And I'm just, no. All right, I'm gonna move this on. Okay, we need to recover from, I don't know. I'm like, the order is random over here, y'all. The order is random. I don't know what I'm doing, y'all. Okay, let's go to, oh, you know what? I'll do a book that I think would have been really good as a women's prize book. Okay, so we went from a long listed women's prize book to a book that I think would have been an amazing women's prize book. And so it's called Factory Girls by Michelle Gallen. This is great, okay? This tells the story of Maeve, who is a young woman at the point in her life when she is about to leave high school, what I would consider a high school, or for a lot of countries, secondary school, I believe, and perhaps go to college if she has made the grades, made the test scores, and she's in that interim period where she is waiting to hear back about her grades. And also in this interim period, she decides to become a factory worker. I forget what, I think the factories sewed shirts. She gets a job with her girlfriends, and so they all become factory girls working together. Also, this book is set during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and it is so interesting the way that Michelle Gallen can balance wonderful humor with the honest tragedy of living in I wouldn't say war-torn country, but living in harsh conditions in which like local bombings and shootouts and people dying is a reality of this young lady's life. And this extremely unsafe environment. And she does this beautiful balance of never letting the reader forget that these young women are growing up in what I would consider a rather unique situation, because they have to think about where they're going and who's occupying occupying a pub, and what to do when there's a bomb threat, and how to distinguish a real bomb threat from a faux bomb threat. Like, I don't know how to do that, and I've never had to decipher those things. And yet for these women, it's second nature and everyday moments. But it's punctuated with Maeve, who kind of has like a curmudgeon, funny, self-deprecating outlook on the world. So because she's mostly our narrator, she has these moments where it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. She's so funny, but in this kind of irreverent and unlikable in some ways way. Like, she's not necessarily someone I would 100% want to be friends with. That's not true. Upon meeting Maeve, I would not think that we would be friends. And then the more I got to know her, I would be like, girl, you are my best friend. That's exactly how it would be. Like, it's sort of like a hard outer shell, maybe a hard exterior, and that's what she presents to the world. And yet inside, she is just so lovable, and you kind of love her in spite of or because of her mistakes, and I just loved it. So it's great. It's really about their friendship, this female friendship, this wonderful time in their life where there's a lot of change. They're on the precipice of a lot of change, and what it would be like living as a young woman during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, which was super fascinating. So it also falls under the prompt of fierce reads, which under like female friendship for fierce reads, this would be perfect. Or up and coming author. I think Michelle Gallen has a lot going for her, and I want to see more from her. And I just think this would have been such a good Women's Prize long list book. It hit all the high notes. I'll finish my Irish reads. Now, the Megan Nolan book was not an Irish readathon, but it was about Irish immigrants. Let's think, Michelle Gallen is definitely an Irish author, and, oh my gosh, Tana French. She is also an Irish author, and so I will actually finish up because the Irish readathon was going on. I didn't talk about it, but I unintentionally participated in it. If I can find I think Lisa in Bookland is a host, and if I find any more information about the Irish readathon, I will leave it linked down below. It's a great readathon. It was not top of mind for me in March. So the final Irish book, I think this is the final one that I read, is The Searcher by Tana French. This is the beginning of a new series by Tana French. Again, she's an Irish author. Love her writing. Obviously, I just gushed about the likeness. And so this is not one of her Dublin Murder Squad series. This is the Cal Hooper, I believe. Yeah, Cal Hooper series. I'm not exactly sure the tagline for it. I'm gonna sneeze. This book, the second book just came out, and it's called The Hunter. So The Searcher is about Cal Hooper, who is a retired Chicago cop who is taking his early retirement to a really teeny tiny small town in Ireland. And I believe it's set in present day. Cal Hooper is he's slightly estranged, I would say, from his family. He's gone through a rough divorce, and he just wanted somewhere quiet where he basically doesn't have the chatter of his work. Like, he doesn't want to be thinking about police work. He wants to get away from it all, but he also wants to get away from like the city and the people, all this stuff. It just seems like what he needs is a slower pace of life. And so he is out in the middle of nowhere, essentially, in this teeny tiny little Irish town where he is working to redesign, like redo, renovate, essentially, like renovate a home. But he's doing it by himself, and it's going really slowly. And meanwhile, while he's there, he makes friends with the local characters with a capital C, because he like makes friends with one of the kids in town who seems to want to hang around Cal, and they sort of forge a bit of like a begrudging parent-child relationship. He's friends with his neighbor. He's friends with like the nosy storekeeper, a lady. So and meanwhile, this murder mystery, or this missing persons mystery, supposed murder, seems to have kind of fallen in his lap, and he gets sucked in, and it's kind of got the vibes of small town with bigger secrets. And I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I'm realizing how much I enjoy Tana French and her writing. It's very atmospheric. It's sometimes it can be very moody. Ireland is rainy and cloudy, and sometimes the weather can be cold and oppressive. And sometimes that's like exactly what the characters are going through. And then she'll be able to like write in a very delightful, cheery, refreshing character, or there's a really great banter that goes on between some of the characters. So I really liked this. I liked this. She doesn't solve everything. She lets the bigger mystery sort of hang out there, enticing the reader to pick up the next book. But she ties up this mystery enough that it feels satisfying to have read. So I really love this. One of the Fierce Reads prompts was also about a strong female protagonist, and there is none stronger than Agnes, who, and I'll talk about her in a moment, in the book Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. So Agnes, this is set in Iceland. Let me see. I read it on my Kindle. in 1829. So here we are in Iceland in 1829, and Agnes is accused of murder, and she is sent to this family to await her execution. And boy, is it just super dark. Like, dark as in, like, not the content itself isn't scary or disturbing even, but the mood, like, they're doing part of the daily jobs is like slaughtering animals for sausage, for food, for sustenance. And so there are times where, like, the ladies are encasing sausages, or like they're cleaning out an animal and they're just like covered in blood, and it's cold and it's eerie out, and it perfectly mirrors this story where we, the readers, are trying to figure out if Agnes actually committed this murder and what was the bigger story behind it all. And so, meanwhile, she's talking to a priest because she does have this execution date looming right in front of her. And slowly the story of what happened comes out, and it's just it was so perfectly moody. It was so perfectly eerie. Everything about it just was extremely atmospheric, and it worked to tell this story of someone dying and what happened and what caused it. It was so good. It was so good. I actually had a while back asked for weird historical fiction recommendations, and this was recommended to me. And so, Starla, if you're watching, thank you so much. It was such a good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Agnes is a wildly strong female protagonist, and in a lot of ways she got in and amongst me. I think about her, and just my heart aches for her. So it was a really good book. Something I thought was going to be eerie but ended up not being so was Lone Women by Victor Lavelle. This is Adelaide. I like that name. So this is the story of Adelaide Henry, who, with her and her massive trunk, which you're like, wink wink, nudge nudge, what's in that trunk kind of thing, leaves her hometown and goes to the middle of nowhere in Montana. This is set, I don't know, in 1915. And so she's trying to make it as a black woman on her own in this small town to work the land and eventually acquire land. And of course there's eerie, creepy things going on. Yeah, this was a train wreck and a half to me. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, it was just terrible. I could, oh my goodness. So, like, nothing about this, well, okay, Adelaide and her struggle, like, it would have been so interesting if she went on this journey. I don't care about the trunk and what the trunk ended up having in it. It was just, I hated that. Hate is such a strong word. I really disliked that. But I thought, and there was like this family that was kind of, they were creepy and kind of, troublemakers, to be taking that lightly. And they were kind of following Adelaide in some ways. This is just, it was terrible. Okay, so here's what was working for me with this book. Adelaide going to Montana, which you find out right away. That would have been enough. I read this with, I got some thoughts from some friends as well. Like, one of my friends pointed that out, and I was like, yeah, actually Adelaide's story in and of herself, like the idea of survival and trying to survive and working the land and meeting characters along the way while also struggling against the atmosphere and struggling against the elements, rather, would have been perfect. Like, that would have been a really cool read. But instead, it's like it has these elements of horror and evil and not do-gooders, like, and it's just like, it was so fragmented and disjointed, and it left so many questions up out there in the open. I just despised it. I thought this was terrible. And then at the very end, he was like, and in case you didn't get my message, here is the message of the story. And I was like, bruh, I got it. Like, I got it. Like, you didn't have to do that, okay? Like, I can't even with that kind of stuff. So yeah, Victor LaValle, I thought I was gonna get like a thriller horror book, like something that teeters on that edge, and instead I got just a wretched, awful, terrible, not well written, message heavy piece of trash. I really dislike this book. Okay, I'm so sorry for those of you who loved it. There are people who do, and I really respect your opinion, but for me, it was rough. It was rough. On to happier books. Also sadder books. Okay, another female author. This is Hausfrau by Jill Alexander Essbaum. This tells the story of somebody, Anna, who is living in, boy, we really traveled the world with these reads. We were in Iceland. Now this is her Swiss husband, Zurich. So we are in Switzerland. We're in Switzerland with this book and with Anna. Oh my, okay, so this book has made the rounds on BookTube. It's supposed to have a little heat, a little spice in it. And I was kind of going through this thing. I had just finished Lone Woman, and I was like, I need something different. And so I picked this up. And this is the story of Anna, who is very much like, she's straight up having an affair, and a lot of it is, is documenting how, in how she's able to get away with it. A lot of it is her inner life, though, and what has led her in a lot of ways to make this decision. I thought the first half was way stronger than the second half. It actually kind of fell apart a little for me during the second half. I thought Essbaum was kind of cruel to her character Anna in a way that I don't know. I don't know if I agreed with. I think I understand what she was trying to do. I think she was, in some ways, Essbaum was trying to write a tragedy. But the second half, I don't know. I don't need a hopeful book. I don't. It's not something I need. But I think at some point I was rooting for Anna. And I was sad that I was sad at kind of the way that everything wrapped up. And so it's very much, Anna is living in Switzerland. She doesn't know the language. She's been there for quite a while. There's been tragedy in her life. And also, meanwhile, while you're kind of following her through her life and how she's leading her life, which is very much not romanticizing. I did not feel like she was romanticizing the affair. I mean, we all know, and even Anna knows what she's doing is wrong. And we're also able to sort of listen in on these counseling sessions that Anna is having, and you slowly realize and put together, the readers do, like, why she's in these counseling sessions, and it's a lot deeper than one would have thought, and where those sessions are leading her, and so I thought all of that worked. It was really about the 2/3 mark where I was like, I don't think this is really working anymore. It just wasn't really coalescing in a way that was satisfying to me as a reader. Though I thought the structure and the way that it was very, very kaleidoscopy. She would, I don't know, the way it all worked really did work to a point, and then it kind of stopped working. If that makes sense. I'm kind of talking about it in vague terms. This is not for the faint of heart. It is quite spicy. It is talking about a subject matter that is just sort of diving into this subject matter of promiscuity and infidelity, and it's exploring those concepts. So, again, but I thought beautifully written, really interesting, but again, didn't quite kind of take it home for me. Let's talk about a book that did take it home for me. I actually read this in February, but I didn't talk about it in my March wrap-up because I wanted to do this video in which I talked about booktubers' favorite books, and I was judging booktubers' favorite books. And then from that video, I actually read one of a book that kept on popping up over and over again in the best of list, and I thought it would align with my taste. And this could be an up-and-coming author because I am so excited as to whatever this author writes next, because it is In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. This is the story of, this has made the booktube rounds, so I'm so sorry if I'm not adding anything really to the conversation, but I will say that this is about Elwood and Gaunt. I was gonna look it up and then I remembered it. This is the story of Elwood and Gaunt who meet at a posh boys' school, and they are at the age where they can sign up to fight in World War I. And due to a lot of different circumstances, they both end up fighting in World War I. And they also have this beautiful, incredible love for each other, and they're friends, and it was just fantastic. It doesn't shy away. Wynne did not shy away from the tragedies of war. The Battle of the Somme is heavily featured in this, and it was really interesting to get to know World War I in a way that I don't really think I've paid much attention to before. And this perspective from the British, how sacrificial it was for them losing all these young men. And it really, at the heart of it, is about this incredible, amazing, gorgeous, beautiful love story. And I just love this book. It has to be one of my favorites for the whole year. It's so good. It is so good. The characters are beautiful. One of the characters also just really loves poetry, and he's always quoting Tennyson's poem In Memoriam. And it's about longing and desire and the tragedies of war and friendship and loss and family, and I just loved it. I love this book. It was so beautiful. And I need to get my own copy because it's one of those books that I want my own copy. And if you have not read it, or you're wondering if you'll like it and you want to know my opinion on it, I'd say this is so worth it. It was so beautiful and I just loved it. I will quickly go over my current reads. I'm currently reading Deception on His Mind by Elizabeth George. This is the 9th book in the Elizabeth George series. So yay, exciting, love her work. I also am on the hunt for 5-star reads, favorite reads. That's a mission that I have for myself this month, and so I picked up The Last Samurai by Helen DeWitt, and I am about 100 pages in, and let me tell you right now, it's going very well. And then, finally, I was poking around on the internet, as one does, you know, as a person who is living in this day and age, and I looked at this updated list of the books, the 100 books that shaped America. It was something that the American Library of Congress put together this list. It was a display, and it's now a list that you can look at. Really interesting, really well put together. But a book that came up on that list, and I was like, oh, I didn't know it was so integral to American literature and American history, was Whitla Cather's My Antonia. And so a few days ago I picked this up, and I'm about halfway through, and it's very different than I had expected, and I'm really liking it. So my mission to read like 5-star books or find favorites for the month of April has been going really well, and I've been really enjoying this mission. And yeah, that's it. Tell me about some of your favorite reads of this month. I would love to know. I'm spent, y'all, I'm spent. I've been talking for a very long time. So, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye!